Hey guys, Mike here from Old Man Things, and welcome to the Old Frog and Toad. I already lit my pipe and realized I didn't have my microphone on, so smoking some Fisherman's Daughter, and I have my favorite pipe, a James Upshaw. So I thought I'd tell you a little story. When my wife and I were first dating before we got married, we decided to take a little trip. So I wanted to show her where my grandparents lived um, in Canada. And since when I was 16, my grandparents left Ontario and they moved to Nova Scotia by Halifax. But before that, they lived on a lake in a town called Restoule near North Bay, Ontario. And I spent every summer there from 6 until about 16. So we went for a week. And the first night when we got in, we went through Sault Ste. Marie, so I went through the UP into Sault Ste. Marie. And it had been like, well, since I was 16, since I had been there. So the one restaurant I always liked was Harveys, and it's where they make the hamburger. You tell them what you want on the hamburger. If you've ever been to Harveys, not Hardee's, Harveys. So we went to a Harveys in this in the Sault Ste. Marie across. I think that's the name of the town as well, across into Canada. And as we were sitting there, it was about maybe 6 o'clock at night. As we were sitting there eating, I overheard somebody say, "Sorry, I got a phone call." So this is coming. It's starting off boring, but hopefully it'll get a little bit better. I overheard a guy saying that there was a baseball thing going on to St. Marie, and he told his wife, he said, "Hurry up because we're gonna have a hard time finding a hotel." So I overheard that, and I said to my at the time girlfriend, Linda, that's the name of my wife. We got to quick go and beat these guys. Well, everywhere we drove, and we were heading towards North Bay. So everywhere we drove, the hotels said, no vacancy. And I think I was, we got into Sault Ste. Marie at 6. We went to a grocery store and got some English food, and then we went to that thing. So it was around 7:30, probably 8 o'clock by the time we left there to start looking for a hotel. There was nothing there, so we just started driving, hoping that we would find someplace. And finally, we found this little hotel off the side of the road. It was probably like 10 o'clock at night, and then maybe 9:30, 10. And it was all closed up, but the sign said vacancy. So I knocked on the door, and this guy turns on the light and opens it up. And he was kind of creepy looking. And when he saw my wife, I don't want to. He started going like this. Started doing all this. And he gave us a room, and it was like one of those. So what is that considered, a motel versus a hotel, where you go and park up next to the room and then open up the door? And it was all like set up from the furniture and the colors and everything was from the 60s. Of course, my wife was horrified. Linda was, of course, not my wife at the time, but so I rigged up this thing on the door. I had like hangers and stuff. Anything, thinking if they try to open that door, this would go crashing down and wake us up. Well, when we woke up in the morning and obviously nothing happened, and we got ready to go, I thought I'm going to see how good this is. So I didn't. I had left it all up, and I opened up the door, and it all stayed in place. It never moved. So then we went into Sudbury, Ontario, that next day. And we got a hotel in Sudbury, and we ate at this really neat place called Tommy Knocker's Pub. And the funny thing about that was the car we had was this from the '90s. It was a Buick LeBaron. And those doors were big old heavy doors. It was just a two-door thing. And we went to this gas station or some kind of shop, and the doors would always come back at you. They're so heavy, this old LeBaron. And Linda was getting out, and I don't know why it was so funny. She was getting out, and the door hit her. And when I looked back, she was like all like her glasses were like that, and she's like, ah, like she had gotten beat up with the door. Well, I started to laugh. Well, I knew she'd be upset if she knew I was laughing. So I went into the shop. Well, I was trying to stop from laughing, but the harder I tried to not to laugh, I was just crying with laughter. And it was this guy from India who owned the place, and he was looking at me like I was mentally insane. Finally, I couldn't stop. I finally had to go out there, and I tried so hard. And then we went to a Tim Norton's for a cup of tea and coffee, and I was laughing so hard, and I was trying so hard. And Linda finally said to me, she said, "If you laugh one more time, I'm leaving." Well, I tried so hard, and I burst out laughing. But anyway, she didn't leave. But that was fun. And then the next day, we go into North Bay, but we went to Restool first, and I knew I couldn't just drive up to the house, but I wanted to see it so bad. So there was like I knew there was public land like further up, so we parked on the side of the road, and then we went walking through the woods, and I wanted to show them. So we went walking through the woods, and then we got onto the lake, and then I walked because I knew it was. My memory was it was fairly shallow, so we walked along the shore till I could get to the house. Well, they had a big old dog, and the dog was going berserk, so Linda ran off to the car, and then I broke my sandal from all the muck. But I got to see it, and they wrecked that house. My grandpa built that house. He did all the landscape. Oh well, can't go back in time, can you? But when we were in Restool, because it was my grandparents lived on Commanda Lake, and then there was Restool Lake as well, and they were both kind of connected. Well, there was some cabins. We found there was some cabins that we could rent on Restool Lake, So we drove down this long dirt road, and the guy who had the cabins was, I'm trying to think of where he worked. He worked near Toronto, lived near Toronto, but he owned that place, and he was winterizing all the, because it was beginning of September. He was winterizing all the cabins. So he said, "Well, I've got this cabin here. I haven't winterized yet." So we said we'd stay for 3 nights, 3 or 4 nights. I think we stayed. It was a really neat cabin, and it was right on the water. And then in the during the day, we'd drive into North Bay and go to some of the shops and stuff, go out to eat. And the guy who, that name of that town where he's from, it's just like right there. It's on my tip of my tongue. It begins with an H. Anyways, the guy had a friend with him and the friend's wife, and they were four wheeling. Well, one day, the guy said to me, the owner of the place, he said, "We're going to have a beach party if you want to come down, and we'll have a fire and everything." So Linda had a headache, so she didn't want to go. So I just walked down there, and his friend was all liquored up. And when he knew I was an American, he came up and he wanted to fight me. And he kept on saying, "When are you guys going to take us over, huh? When are you guys going to take us over?" And the owner was like, "No, no, no, no." I just remember thinking to myself, "What am I going to do to get out of this?" So, anyways, that was fun. And then they let us rent, or they didn't let us rent. They just let us take out the boat. So that was fun to go out on the water. So on our way back home, we had enjoyed in Sudbury. We had enjoyed that place called Tommy Knockers so much. So we went to try to find it. And of course, as we were driving, we kind of didn't know what. We just drove and found it and thought, let's eat here. So to try to find the place, and that was before cell phones and stuff. So I had a good idea where it was, but it took us like 2-3 hours to find this place. Once we finally found it, we went in and we ordered what we had ordered before. It wasn't half as good as what we had thought. Remember, it never usually is it? But when we went to leave, I was all turned around, and we're driving, and all of a sudden we get to this part, and there was this cops everywhere, and they're all with like their battle gears, um the shields and the bulletproof vests, and they had the semi-automatic rifles, and it was all like blocked off. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I I went up to the. I like pulled up next to the cop, rolled the window down, and said, "We're from America. We're trying to get back to this highway to get back to Sault Ste. Marie. Do you know how to do it?" And they're all looking at me with shock. And the guy goes, "Take that road there." So I go, and it was a stoplight, and Linda's screaming that I'm running a stoplight with cops everywhere, and I wasn't thinking. So I go down this road, and then I end up going, and it was a one-way road the wrong way, and all these cops are going like that, and Linda's screaming at me. So I reverse, and then there's like, I don't know, 20, 30 cops. They're all standing there looking at me like I'm nuts. Anyways, that's always a fun memory. So we got back on the highway and got into Sault Ste. Marie, went through the border, and the back of the trunk was filled with English beer. It was absolutely full, and I was worried I'd have to pay like a duty or something on it. So when I went to the customs, they said, "Do you have anything to declare?" And I said, "Well," and I had done this when I would come back from England, and I'd have my suitcase full of sausages and stuff. So "Oh, we got." She got some sunglasses. I said, "I got some socks." I said, "I got this hat," and the guy's like, "Go on." So we go on. If he had stopped us and opened up the trunk and saw all the beer. Anyways, so we got home that night, and the next morning was a Monday, and Linda took off. She didn't want to go to work. We both worked at the newspaper at that time. So she's like, "I have this too much going on. I don't want to work." I knew I had to go ahead. So that next morning was September 11th. Now, had we waited that day, one more day, and we almost did, because Linda didn't have to work, and I didn't have to work, but I thought that since I'm home, I'll just go in. They would have closed the border. We would have never gotten through it, not for a while, anyhow. But I remember calling her and saying, "Are you watching the news?" And she said, "No." And I said, "We're at war," because you didn't know what was going on at that time. When they hit the Pentagon, it was like, you don't just hit the Pentagon. I mean, we're at war. So, anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Cheers, everyone, and toodle pip.